talking about dollar and strong dollar, right? And you were saying what Trump probably wants is a dominant dollar, but not a too strong dollar, which leads to, and we've had this conversation before, and this was offline if I remember correctly, the prospects for what folks are calling a new age, new era Plaza Accord, not to do with Japan, obviously, but related to China. You were saying that, look, unlikely if there's any sort of deal like that, it's going to mean a devaluation of the dollar. That would be almost unthinkable, right? But what it could mean is a realignment of the value of the dollar versus G10. Is that right?
It's probably,
talk to me more about this idea.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are many ways to couch this, and to be really clear, it's probably not the first port of call. Yeah. But surely it cannot be dismissed in the toolbox. And the thought behind it is saying, you know, from the post-pandemic era, these major currencies have depreciated so much, which is then linked back to the US trade deficit. And yes, the dollar is strong, and that reflects the state of US exceptionalism, but this is unfair trade advantages and rigged ones. And so they're just removing the distortions in recalibrating, and that would be the case. The interesting point of that would be to see, I mean, if that tail risk does take place, the interesting aspect would be to see to what extent PBOC and China are involved in that negotiation, and to what degrees the calibration would stretch to, because it needs to be a delicate operation.
All right, because what's implicit in what we were just talking about is, you know, if a dollar realigns with G10 relative to the renminbi, it means the renminbi would have to firm, yes?
Yes. The one way to think about it, though, is I don't think that the PBOC is opposed to a slightly stronger renminbi, not in principle because of two reasons. One is they're much, and they're much higher up the value chain, and so the competitiveness from the renminbi is a defunct concept. And I think they've got enough spare capacity to be able to adjust the currency, but that's in the absence of a trade war and imposed tariffs. So it's one or the other. And the last reason is if China needs to do China plus one for itself, then they need to be more acquisitive. They need to go out there, start plants, acquire know-how, acquire manufacturing facilities, so on and so forth. And to all this
but I mean, haven't they been doing that? Because since phase one, right, or even probably before, right, China has understood that, look, this is what the U.S. position is, this is what how they view us. So what we need to do is to go, look, let's look elsewhere. And that elsewhere has been Europe, it has been Africa, it has been everywhere else but the U.S.
Yes, but a stronger renminbi would be to their advantage, because it means they can acquire more, they're in a stronger position to make a bid. So that there are advantages to have a somewhat stronger renminbi, but to the point that you made earlier, it could worsen some aspect of deflation. But China is mainly an exporter, not an importer, so that channel is not as important for China.
Okay.
We were speaking to David Roche earlier. He's got dollar China at 8.5, 8.50 by the end of the year. Is that aggressive, or does that make sense given the current environment and the setup? And my other question is this: does it necessarily follow that if there is a trade war, and let's hope we don't visit that worst case scenario, that a currency war and a race to the bottom follows as well?
So yeah, here's the thing, right? Because you would think that, okay, 8.5 theoretically, right, it would juice their exports even more, but at the same time it would also aggravate trade imbalances and mean more tensions and more frictions, right? I'm wondering, have you modeled this out? At what level, RMB, right, does it also trigger literally a run, right, an exodus? And this is the thing that authorities in Beijing are worried about, concerned about. It's not as though Chinese money hasn't been trying to get out of the country. Obviously they have, right? And because it's a closed-loop system, there aren't very many outlets, right? Not property anymore. Maybe the stock market, right, because it's been looking pretty good. The other area is crypto. That's where a lot of Chinese have been trying to sort of park their money. If we get to 8.5 or even weaker, what happens then? Where does Chinese money go?
I thank you, Martin. You answered for me. So that's one of the big problems with the 8.5.
Yeah.
You can't actually mitigate and probably a destabilizing run. We have already seen financial outflows have been very outsized, far worse in multiples of 2015, 2016. So you surely don't want to exacerbate that. So that's one key risk. The other one is, this is the type of renminbi move that's probably going to catalyze a Plaza Accord to a Trump Plaza, so to speak. So that's the other aspect of it. So something has got to give somewhere. And Sri, you made a great point, but in today's context, and particularly in today's circumstances, nothing is outlandish, I suppose.